want you to tell us about your experience of being pregnant in prison.
They have, moldy trays, moldy cells, moldy showers, and, your only water that you have is the water that comes out of a spout over a toilet bowl. And they want you to, drink that water, and people are washing their underclothes in it, brushing their teeth. And I also try to fight for an extra food tray, but they would not give me extra food. They wouldn't give me my prenatal vitamins. I kept a chip bag, and I would put ice, because when they would feed us our meals, they fill up this big old jug full of ice water. And they give you almost like maybe 5 minutes to eat, because they drop your tray, they go around in a circle, and by the time they get back, they want you to be done with eating.
And you're pregnant.
Then I'm pregnant. So I would get my chip bag and I would fill it with ice so I could have water. They would have me belly chained. They would have chains on my feet.
A chain on your belly?
On my belly.
Oh,
they would have me shackled at my hand, my belly, and my feet. They would always have me with somebody else. Every time they would transfer me anywhere, back and forth. And they actually induced my labor and made me, because I had to go to a doctor's visit, and I could overhear the conversation that the U.S. Marshals were having with my doctor. My doctor was cussing them out, and I could hear his anger. He was telling them that he didn't care who they thought they were, that he was not going to induce me to have my baby unless I was ready to have my baby, because they wanted me to have my baby before Christmas.
That is inhumane.
Mm-hmm. So they induced my labor December 26th. They pulled me out and took me to the hospital. They ended up getting cussed out again by my doctor, because I heard him again when I was in labor, and they had me in shackles. They took me into this dark room. It wasn't a normal room where you give birth. It was like in secluded area. It was like really dark. That's what I remember about it. I went in that room. There was a table, and I was up there to give birth, and they took the shackles and everything off of me, but they cuffed my leg one of my legs to the
And
bed.
you're in labor
and
with
I'm
your
in
legs
labor.
shackled.
Mm-hmm. There was the U.S. Marshal, and then there was one at the door guarding it, and of course the nurse.
Were these female marshals?
Mm-mm.
They're male marshals who are not doctors in the room with you while you're shackled in labor about to give birth, that they've induced your labor.
And so the doctor comes in, sees the chain on me, and he just gets furious. And he's telling them in his own choice words, she don't need that on her. Where is she going to go, basically? And, to take it off. And I remember they took it off. And I remember I had my arm there for a little bit, cuffed.
Still cuffed. Your arm and a leg was cuffed.
They took it off my leg. And then eventually, while I was actually giving birth, they removed the one from the arm.
I'm sitting here shocked. This is the first time that you've ever told me the details. And as a woman who has given birth, that is one of the most inhumane things that I've ever heard in my life.
And I believe it was a heinous crime. And compared to the crime that they accused me of, I feel like that's heinous. You should never do something like that to a pregnant woman or a baby. You should not remove a baby from their mom. The doctor gave me an extra day to stay, and he fought for me to have that extra day. It wasn't really a whole day. It was just like maybe half of that day. And so it was about 2.5 days that I stayed in the hospital, but I didn't sleep. I just wanted to hold my baby, and then they allowed my other daughter to come. Man, that just broke my heart when they brought her, because she's 10 months at this time. Oh. Because when I seen her, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
Ooh. So, okay.
Okay.
So when I seen her, it just broke my heart because the way that I was with her, I was so like she was my little doll.
Crystal.
I could see the pain in her eyes. She was so confused. It broke my heart. And she wasn't being cared for like the way I cared for her. I would dress her up. She had a little outfit on for her pajama time, her house time. We would go out. She'd have her little outfit to go out with. You know, her bib was never wet. I had like a pile of bibs. And, you know, anytime it was dirty or wet, she would never be wet. And that's how I seen her when I had her. You know, her clothes were mismatched, and you know her bib was wet, and it was maybe 4 months before I got to see Nova again.
Really, you were one of the first women who came out after you were one of the three first women who got their release when I received my freedom. And I was asked to give a list to the president of people who I knew that were worthy candidates. He was so excited about me being released. You and I went through it together, but we were in separate prisons. After 7 years of being there with you, praying with you, studying with you, because we were two studying women. We loved really understanding the other women around us because they may be of a different faith. But we needed to understand we were strong in our faith. But in prison, we didn't have a division. When I came home, that was one of the things that really surprised me, was how divided people were.
Right.
And we were able to live in community
Right.
and not be divided.
Right.
And so that really has given me courage to do the things that I do, is knowing that being in the darkest place that we could possibly be on in a prison, separated from my children, not having any hope that anything was going to change, but still hoping in spite of people saying you have no hope. We still hoped. We still had faith. And I know that's why you and I are both sitting here free having this conversation today, because I definitely was not supposed to have hope that I would ever see the light of day. Our shared disappointments when Clemency Project 2014 came about. And I know you were excited because we both knew we fit the criteria.
Right.
Didn't have any criminal record.
It renewed us.
Yes, it did. It gave us so much hope. But then after watching the list, and we're on none of these lists, I already remember saying to people, naming some of the women who I left behind at Carswell, women I knew were going to get out. You were one of those women. I just knew that Crystal Munoz was going to get out.
And that was the same thing with me when that criteria came out. I just knew, I mean, above all people, you would meet that criteria because you had already been there over a decade. You had already been shot free your whole time. You know, like you met that criteria.
But like you, we were officially left behind in January of 2017. We both watched Obama wave goodbye to the nation as he left the White House, and we were both still sitting in prison. And people were telling us that you can forget it now.
Right.
But we don't look at things the way the rest of the world look at them. We both knew that the heart of the president was in the hands of the Lord, and he could turn it any way that he wanted to. And I know it was my prayer that his heart would be turned toward me. It would be turned toward you. How did you feel when you felt that it was over with for Clemency Project 2014?
Man, it crushed my family a lot more than it did me. Because I was on a change.org petition, and they were so excited because I guess this is an unusual amount of signatures on a petition to have, because it was going over 100,000 signatures, and it was like nearing closer to almost 200,000. And it made my husband and daughters really hope and excited, like she's gonna come home, like look at all these signatures. And every day every week that list would come out with new people that were getting clemencies. When that day happened, the last list came out and I wasn't on it. Ricky had to sit my girls down and tell them, because they really believed that I was gonna come home. They just cried. I was disappointed, and I was kind of, numb. I think at this time I'm numb.
So many disappointments.
I'm numb, and and I'm stubborn, and I'm ready to redo another clemency.
Fight again.
Do it again.
Me too.
Do it again.
I was not going to stop fighting. When did you hear about that Kim Kardashian had taken my case up?
Oh my goodness. I heard about it the day you got out of prison.
That's when you heard about it.
That's when I heard about it. And it was just amazing to see it. I didn't know Kim Kardashian had helped you right at that moment. It just started coming on the news and stuff, how she had advocated for you and how it had happened. And I actually could never even bring myself to even ask that you would even consider helping me. I had maybe a dozen people approach me and ask me, do you know Miss Alice Johnson personally? And I would tell them, yes, I do. Because I didn't tell people. I really didn't tell people, much.
President Trump had asked me, it was breaking news when he was being honored for the First Step Act. And I was in the audience, and he asked me to get him that list if there were other good people like myself.
And now another thing I didn't know and realize was that they used my case in the First Step Act to push forward the First Step Act, so they'll no longer shackle women in the federal prisons. I couldn't fathom the extent. I couldn't until I came out of prison. Could I realize the extent of it all and how it just was orchestrated and came to pass.
Can you describe how you felt when you learned that you might have a chance to be released from prison?
I was in shock because my counselors called me to their office, and they were looking at the computer screen, and then when I came in, they both just had this look on their face that when you get called to the counselor's office, you never know what it's for.
Sure don't.
And you're always assuming it has to do with you or some job assignment or some move change or something like that. But the looks on their face was nothing like that. They were almost in a state of shock too, I think. And they asked me, they said, who do you know? And I didn't understand the question. That's the first thing they said when I went into their office. They said, who do you know? And I said, what do you mean, who do I know? And they showed me the computer screen, and they were showing me a news article that had came out with a list of names that President Trump had pardoned or gave clemency to. And there was a Crystal Munoz on there with a marijuana conspiracy, and then it had the years, the sentence. They said, you're the only Crystal Munoz in the women's federal prison with this sentence, and your name matches your sentence. You're the only one that we know of. And when I seen that, I was like, I knew in that moment, I thought of you, and I was shocked that I was even a part of that. and I had no emotions. Like, I know I imagined all my years, like imagining when I would be released, I would be full of joy and I would be screaming and shouting, or I would be just like crying because of joy, you know. I was emotionless.
I know what you mean.
And
There are times you become numb.
like when I tell you, you could have slapped the crap out of me and I would have just took it like I couldn't feel it. That's how I felt. And I just pointed up and I told him that's all I know.
It's God.
That's all I know. And you know, I walked out of that office and I stayed in that state of shock probably for a week. But the only thing that broke me when I when I first walked into the house where my husband and my daughters were staying, that made me cry. That's when I really broke down and cried.
Yeah, because when you first came home, y'all, you stayed at, he had to go pick you up. You left prison the same day that you're told that you're coming home. Honestly, you never left my heart. There is no way that I would have put a list before the president that Crystal Munoz's name was not on there. I knew what you had gone through. Plus, I knew your faithfulness. I knew you personally. And I know that you not only didn't have a criminal mind, that you were not a criminal. And even no matter what time that you could go home to your girls and your husband early, I wouldn't have cared if it was a day or a year, 2 years, whatever the time is, you deserve to go home. You had spent enough time away from your family. And when I had an opportunity to fight for you, I didn't have to make a big announcement. I'm fighting for Crystal Munoz. I just had to do it. Most of the people who I helped had no idea that I was helping them because I knew what it felt like myself to be thinking that it's going to happen. I just wanted it to happen and be able to see you and hug you and welcome you home. And I had the privilege of talking to your husband. They gave me the news that they were going to allow my friend Crystal Munoz to come home. And if I could give them the name of a family member and a number. I believe President Trump talked to Ricky, right?
My goodness, that is like, my husband was raised without his father. He was raised with his mom and his two sisters. He was the only man in the house. And he cherishes that phone call. You have to hear him tell you about that phone call, because I can never do that phone call justice, but he cries when he tells me about that phone call.
And what it meant to have President Trump personally call him and let him know that his wife was coming home, that he was granting your freedom.
I think that's like the best memory or the best experience that my husband had in his life was that phone call with him.
This ever the president of the United States called him personally. He could have had an aide call you, anyone called you. He could have just told the prison, but he wanted your husband to know. Because I talked to the president about you and about how Ricky had been by your side trying to raise your daughters on his own. It wasn't a lot of people that President Trump has picked up that phone and said, even anything that you are going home or your loved one, I'm letting your loved one come. But I know that Ricky, your case really touched the heart of President Trump, and he wanted to be the one to give your husband the news. If you were sitting here in front of President Trump right now, what would you say to him?
I have so much I would like to say to him. Want to embrace him and thank him with all my heart. Thank him and tell him how he saved my family.
I'm almost having to pause myself because I'm telling you, that's what he's done to all of us.
He literally saved my family. I was almost done with my sentence, and I was okay. serving the rest of it. But that week, 1 week was crucial. I mean, I would just tell him uncut and raw what was actually taking place. You know, that my kids needed me, my husband needed me.
People have no idea what you were going through when you came home. Your children, your daughters were in a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to go into that, but your daughters were in a terrible crisis.
Yeah.
And even just that week that you came home
Yeah.
was really a life and death situation for them.
It was. Literally, like it was.
I'm telling you, God was right on time for you,
On
Crystal.
time.
Right on time. I'm hoping to tell President Trump one day personally, and you'll be able to tell him personally, because I don't think he knows the full impact on what he did in saving your family. I thank God for his compassion.
Me too.
I thank God for him seeing us as more than just a story or more than just a number. And the fact that he wanted to be the one to tell your husband really tells you about his heart.
It says a lot.
It says a lot. He went way beyond what was even necessary to be done. You got a chance to go in and sit down before President Trump. What did President Trump say to you when you were sitting in front of him?
I was speechless. So I really kicked myself in the behind because I had an opportunity, you know, a rare opportunity to sit before the President of the United States and speak to him in my heart, and I couldn't say anything. But I remember him telling us, you know, asking us a little bit about ourselves, and then he made a comment that you need to thank this lady right here, because if it was not for her, you would not be here.
I had no idea he was going to say that. But I know that both Ivanka and Jared and Pam Bundy and Brooks and the rest of the White House staff were so excited to meet you.
And I could genuinely sense that from them. I could genuinely sense it, and I didn't feel uncomfortable, you know, in any way.
Yeah, Jerron Smith was there with us that day too.
I mean, I feel like their hearts were really genuine, and I could just sense the love inside of each of them. And it wasn't fake. It didn't feel, you know, put on or anything like that. But I remember when my heart leapt was when I met Ivanka. She was not there in the beginning. And when I turned, she was like coming through that door, and as soon as I saw her, I felt that leap. Like I just felt this surge of, I don't know what it was.
She definitely has so much compassion upon you and upon your situation, because she's a mother herself. And the thought of the things that you had gone through as a mother, as you say, a crime in itself to treat another human being like that. So I know she was so happy when you got your freedom. Jared was so happy when you received your freedom. And they really couldn't wait to tell me that you were coming home. Jared is such a humble person and has helped me tremendously in my fight to fight for the freedom of others. He was right in there. He said the president told him to call me, call Alice, and make her happy. You know, people are so quick to say you do the crime, you do the time. I know that people have to be held accountable for their actions. I'm not saying that there is no accountability, but when you fit all of the prongs of the need to incarcerate, retribution, rehabilitation has been satisfied, that person is rehabilitated, and they are no safety risk. They pose no risk to the community, because I believe in having safe communities, but I also believe in being smart on crime. What President Trump did in passing the First Step Act was an act of being smart on crime. One of the things that the First Step Act did was it made sure that there were things that they could do in rehabilitation, not just serve your time, not just have dead time, but actually have programs that will prepare them for reentry.
Mm-hmm.
Crystal, I can say today I'm so thankful to have you here.
Thank you.
I love you, Crystal.
I love you too,
I
Miss
love
Alice.
you.
I love you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out, for being here with me
And
today.
thank you for loving me.
It wasn't hard, Crystal.